I want to welcome you to Hope Starts Here, because this is ground zero for hope. Christ is risen. He is risen indeed. Our journey together has been to see him more clearly and love him more dearly and follow him more nearly. And all of that hinges on this day that Jesus Christ is risen. That candle reminds us that the light of the world could not be extinguished by the darkness, and sin and death and guilt and hell are the ultimate expressions of darkness, and they could not keep him in the tomb. And that's our hope for today. So take a moment now, breathe in hope, the hope of the resurrection, and breathe out fear, fear of hell, fear of sin, fear of guilt. Breathe in life. And breathe out death. Because what we see today is Jesus was really raised. It's fascinating in John chapter 20, in the story of the empty tomb, we're told that two disciples, Peter and then John, run to the tomb. They race there. And Peter goes in first, and finally the other disciple who had reached the tomb first, that was John. John and Peter are always racing with each other. John goes in there also. And he saw and believed, the text says. They still did not understand from the scripture that Jesus had to rise from the dead. He saw, he believed, he did not understand. Sometimes in our day, people think that Easter is just a metaphor. It's just a picture that back in the ancient world, people were kind of gullible. They weren't scientific yet. And so it was easy for them to swallow a fairy tale. But the truth is, in the ancient world, people were quite well aware of the fact that dead people tend to stay dead. Like, people have always known you don't expect to see life again where death has triumphed. Ken Davis wrote one story about a woman who, their neighbor had a rabbit. They had a dog, and she looked in the backyard one time and saw to her horror that the dog had the rabbit in its mouth and the rabbit was dead. And she knew the neighbors would be furious, and she didn't want to get blamed for it. So she took the rabbit inside, she bathed it, she blow dried it, fluffed its hair, put a little ribbon around it, and set it back on its porch so that they would not get the blame. A little while later, she heard her neighbor come out, and she was screaming to her husband, "Oh no, our rabbit died a couple days ago. I buried him in the backyard, but he's been dug up and now he's back." Like, people have always known that what's dead tends to stay dead. And what was striking in the story of Jesus is that we're told that the disciples saw and believed. They realized that Jesus, but they did not yet understand. And it took a little while for them to understand that this idea of the resurrection that had been around Israel for quite a while, but it was assumed when resurrection happened, everybody would be resurrected, everything would be set right, all enemies would be defeated. It took them a while to understand what had happened was that Jesus had been resurrected ahead of time as the first fruits, as a promise that resurrection is coming for all of us. This is why resurrection is very different than just life after death. This is why it's important. Jesus was not a ghost. He wasn't a disembodied figure. This is not just that there will be an afterlife. This is a promise that God will redeem all of creation. He will redeem you. He will redeem your body and mine too. And I love that about Jesus. And so on this day, I invite you to just do this in following Jesus. Live in hope. Anytime doubt comes, anytime fear comes, simply remember these words. Jesus Christ is risen. He is really risen. He is seated now at the right hand of the Father. He is preparing for that day when everything wrong will be set right. And that does not rest on your shoulders or mine. So today, live in hope. Hope starts here.